Hi, Heather here from Creative Kiwi. I've put together this video showing how we make this very cute stacked Halloween Peeper design. I saw the artwork online and just knew I had to have it, so I contacted Tammy from Cuddly Cute Designs, and we've got an exclusive right to digitise the design. So I'm so pleased because it is just so very, very cute. I love it. So the sample shown in the video is the 5x7 design, and that makes a finished size of 7 inches wide by 16.5 inches tall. 2 extra hoop sizes in the design set, so you can make up to the 8x12 hoop size, which is 10 inch wide by 26 inch tall. I didn't think we needed the larger sizes for that one, didn't want to make it too big. So like all of our large applique designs, you stitch the design multiple hoopings on water-soluble stabiliser, the fabric type, and basically then you end up with a hanging 3D large design. Right, let's get started. So you need 2 layers of the water-soluble fabric type stabiliser. This makes sure it's strong enough to take the satin stitch edges, and you can still remove all traces of the stabiliser from the edges. We also use pins to keep that stabiliser in place. Now, the first thing we do in all of the pieces is to stitch the outline of the design onto the stabiliser. This shows you the absolute edges of where the fabric will be going. Now, once we've stitched that guideline, we're going to add our piece of batting over the guideline and stitch it out. And I'm sorry, I forgot to press play on that part. Then what we're going to do is actually cut away that batting. Now we do this just to keep the batting out of the edges when we're stitching the design together. And you can see there is a gap between the outline of the absolute outline of the design and where the batting goes. And so that's just to reduce bulk for your machine. Now, I'm showing the design with fabric on both sides. So I'm adding my backing fabric to the back of the design. Now you can tape it, or you can do what I do here. Especially with a bright fabric, you can place that fabric, just float it underneath the hoop, because you can see that it's covering all edges. Or you can tape it in place on the back of the hoop. Now we're going to add that front fabric over the guideline, and you can tape it if you prefer. I'm using the 5x7 size hoop because it's easier for the video, but certainly if you're using a bigger hoop, you might pay to actually tape the fabric in place on the front and the back. Now, once it's finished the outline, we have the Halloween face or the pumpkin face going to be stitched. Now, I haven't shown it here, but I have changed my bobbin thread. So if you are making the design reversible, every time you stitch something on the front, you will need to change the bobbin thread on the back. So there's the pumpkin face. And so now we're just going to remove that from the hoop, and we're going to cut away all the excess fabric on the front and the back of the hoop. Now, I tend to, just as a wee reminder to myself, cut the fabric away on the back of the hoop first. It's just very easy just to cut it away on the front and forget about the back. So it's just a little tip that I do. So there we go. And we're back off to the machine and doing that final stitch. Again, I would have changed the bobbin thread to orange for that. And that's your first segment made. Now, they're all made along the same lines. So what we do is we cut away that excess stabiliser sort of close to the satin stitch edges. We take a bit more time with the raw edges. These pieces are going to be joined later, so if you just get as much fabric away from the edge for those raw edges. Now we're off to part number 2. This is a little Frankenstein, and you'll see it follows the same steps as before. So we stitch the outline on the stabiliser, and then we add our piece of batting. Now, if you're using vinyls, you could leave out the batting. Otherwise, it does make the design look better. It's more padded. Another thing you could do is if you want to make this a stiff wall hanging, you could use bag batting. That's or a heavy felt, and that would just make the design heavier, stronger. This I'm just using my polyester batting. So we've cut away that batting. Now we're just going to put the hair portion, fabric on the back of the hoop and tape in place. And now we're off to the machine, and it's just going to stitch that hair portion piece down. Again with a double line, just to make it easier for when you're cutting away the fabric. So we're just going to remove the excess fabric just from where the green fabric's going to go. You don't have to cut it all away, just that little top bit on the face. But once again, if you are doing a reversible design, you need to do that on the back as well. And so we've got the green head fabric going on the back of the hoop and again on the front of the hoop. Lock to the machine to attach it. We're now just going to stitch those facial features. If it's reversible, change your bobbin thread each time. There's his cute little face. And like before, we're just going to cut away all of the fabric on the front and the back of the hoop. Next, we're off to the machine, and we're just going to do a zigzag stitch, which just neatens those raw edges, but it also gives you an edge to help with the joining. You'll see that there's parts here that haven't been zigzag, and that's where we're going to join the next piece. As you see, you're just matching stitch line on stitch line, and it's between the zigzag. You have a slight, very slight overlap. Now back to your machine, and that's just going to do a zigzag stitch along that join. So what you want to see is that both sides of the fabric has been caught with the zigzag. So let's have a look. I'm sure I stop and check. Yeah, so you want both sides to be caught, because the satin stitch that's going to cover that join is slightly wider. But I mean, if you've missed some fabric out there, then you need to redo that again. Now it's just basically completing the embroidery on the front of the design. So again, changing bobbins if necessary, and you go off and follow the colours as per the instructions. And that's part 2 completed. Same as before, we just cut away that excess stabiliser around the satin stitch edges. You obviously finish that later when the design's completed, but take a little bit more time just to get that nice edge on the pieces that have got the raw edges. Number 2 done. Now we're on to number 3, and again it's going to follow the same methods that we have used before. And this one's really quick because it's just the one fabric. So we've got the design on the stabiliser. We're adding our piece of batting. We're going to cut away that edge of the batting away from the edges so that we can keep it out of the seams. And as I say, this one's just the one piece of white fabric, so pop our back fabric on the back of the hoop or float it. And then your white fabric on top for the ghost. And we're just going to stitch that. Now we're just going to stitch those face details, which is just the eyes, so the white of the eyes, and the dark of the or the black of the eyes. And it's time to cut away all that excess fabric. The magic of video, I can fast forward through so you don't have to watch me doing all that cutting. Now the next thing is, like before, we're just going to do the one row of zigzag before the join. Put our next or our completed design on there, stitch line on top of stitch line, and between that gap and the zigzag, and just tape in place. Really is like a jigsaw. Then off to the machine. Now you can stop and start your machine if you like. As you can see, it's certainly not one of those times where you walk away from the machine when you're joining. You do need to stand there, and you do need to, as I did there, sometimes hold the pieces down. Just make sure that everything's in place. And once you're happy with that join, it's just off to do that last bit of stitching, which is just the edges of the ghost. And I hadn't pressed play, so there you go. That's the ghost finished. Same as before, cut away that excess stabilizer. Yes. Now we're off to do the witch. Following the same idea, stitch the outline onto your stabilizer. Now I use black on here so that you can see. You don't need to use a contrast colour. Normally you do probably a white or something that you use in the design, but I just use the dark colour so you can actually see what's going on here. Now that on the batting you see there's the face and the two little edges on the side. That's just where the hat goes. So we're cutting away that stabilizer, or batting, sorry, cutting away the batting. Now we're going to do our witchy poo. Again, fabric on the front and the back of the hoop. Attach the fabric and do the face details as per the instructions and just the top of her dress. Now we're just going to add those two little hat pieces on the side there. So we're just cutting the fabric away from those edges. You can use two small pieces of fabric if you prefer than the one long strip. And we're just attaching that at the machine. Now we're off to cut away that excess fabric on the front and the back of the hoop. And back to the machine for that last zigzag before the join. The design's certainly getting stacked up now, nearly finished. So latching those stitch lines on stitch lines and taping securely in place. We do that joining stitch. Now we're off to do all the embroidery as per the instructions. We've got her hat and her purple hair. She likes purple this way. Then we're just taking and cutting away that excess stabilizer. Ready for the final piece. So as before, we stitch the outline onto the piece of stabilizer. You can see there's that line at the top. That's the guideline for the hanging tab. So if you want to add a tab, as I'm doing there, just a small piece of folded twine ribbon with the folded edge at the top, then just tape that in place along that line as shown, and then we're going to attach the batting, and that keeps that hanging tab in place and out of your way. For the last time, we're just cutting away that batting. We're going to do the cat first, Now, I did a black cat because I like the black cat. In hindsight, I probably should have used maybe a more grayer fabric. It's hard to see the features. You can see there the white, and I've used black. What you can do is instead of the black of the eyes, you can use a dark grey. That's another alternative if you want that black fabric. We're just cutting away that excess where the hat's going to go. And our witch with, as I say, likes her purple. So the hat fabric on the back of the hoop and on the front, off to the machine. Now we've just got the optional hat flap. You can choose not to do this bit if you like. So we're just putting a little piece of yellow over all the fabric. If you did want, you could actually cut out that little piece, but for that small piece of fabric, it's not going to add that much bulk to your design. So we've attached that flap and just cutting that excess fabric away. Back to the machine as before to do that line of zigzag. And here we go. We're going to match her up again. And get it all taped in place. Their faces are so cute. Do our joining stitch. And now it's just to complete the embroidery with the different colours. So there we go. And it's done. Okay, so for the last time, let's just remove all that stabiliser from around the edges. Being careful not to cut the hanging tab off. I've done it many times. So the last thing to do is just to get some hot water, and I just use Q-tips, and you just go around those edges, and you're just removing all traces of that of the stabiliser. So that's the front done. We just turn over because there's a few places on the back there that we need to also get the stabiliser off. Then you just need to leave it to dry for a wee bit. And it's done. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Remember, all the actual detail of the colour, thread colours, and are included in the written instructions that come with the download. And please share. Make sure you send us copies on probably our Facebook group's the easiest. Send us photos of what you make. I'd love to see them. I'm sure they'll be very, very cute. And thank you.